Welcome everyone. Thanks very much for joining. We're very excited to chat to Arno von Helden from Shyft tonight. Before I get to introducing Arno and chatting a little bit more about that, I'm just going to do a couple of intro slides on the meetup, give some information about the meeting rules. So the Cape Town Product Meetup was started in 2013. We've got over 850 members on Meetup. Not all of them come to every event, but we do get quite a diverse crowd, which is great. And we try to host events quarterly. That was we had a bit of a quiet year last year with COVID, and we've now moved the meetups online, which is great because we get a lot of people that are not in Cape Town. But yeah, you're welcome to reach out to any one of the organizers if you've got ideas for speakers or topics that you think are interesting. We're really open to chatting about anything that's relevant to product managers, particularly in South Africa, and product stories that are local. I think we're all interested in learning from each other's experience. We're three co-organizers here, Anu, Vuzi, and myself. And then in terms of meeting etiquette, if you could just put yourself on mute, please. We're going to not have a formal presentation this evening. It's more like a fireside chat format, and there will be chance for Q&A at the end. If you could please type questions that you have for Arno into the Q&A towards the end. I think if you type them in quite early, we might actually miss them. So type them in towards the end. If you want to tweet about it, you're welcome. Our hashtag is a little bit long and full of letters, but it's Cape Town Product Management, Cape CTPRODMGMT. And we are recording the session, and we'll put it on Meetup afterwards, and also on LinkedIn. So if there's anything that you missed, you're welcome to review and share it. And so let's kick off our discussion with Arno. I'm going to do a little bit of a background. I think if you want to deep dive, you're welcome to consult the internet. But Arno is currently head of Shyft at Standard Bank, has had a long career at the bank, been there just on 10 years, largely looking at global money markets and Forex. And actually, Arno, your career has really been moving money around, right? When I looked a little bit further back, there was, even before the bank, it was an interesting theme to me, like moving money around in various ways. Maybe just give us a little bit of a view of how you came to product.
Thanks, Anita. And first of all, just thanks to everybody for attending and for coming to listen to me. It's quite an honor to have been asked to come and talk to you all. And looking at some of the names that I recognize here, it's actually quite daunting because I know a lot of these people. I've worked with them directly, and I know of some of these people. So yeah, thanks very, very much. I guess it's answering the question of how I became a product manager is kind of like a brief history of Arno von Helden. I think that I've always been someone that's loved solving problems. I've always loved solving problems, and in a way, the more complex the problem, the more of a challenge it becomes. The more I love to get involved and see if I can solve it. And I studied at varsity something called industrial psychology, which has got absolutely nothing to do with finance or banking. And I think what attracted me to industrial psych is really about understanding, complex organizations or complex things, and how you can maneuver things in order to deliver and drive a particular outcome. And I think I was just kind of wired a little bit like that. And that kind of followed me into my career. So wherever I went, it was, I started at a very big corporate and Alexander Forbes, and then moved into a startup where I was the first employee, and then into another startup, and then into Standard Bank. And there's like this common theme of really in all the roles that I was in, I was always trying to do the same thing, and it was always about taking something that was complex and using digital to solve that problem and make it simpler for people. So my very first job at Alexander Forbes, we had a software package, which was a payroll package, and what large corporates struggled with was having to pay the salaries and pay the pensions and pay the medical aids and all of these things on behalf of their employees. Because you can imagine, if you've got 5,000 people working for you and you've got to, pay their salaries, and then you've got to pay their funeral policies and all of these things, it actually gets really complicated. And what we had was, we created a software package where it would just extract that information out of their HR systems and then affect all of these transactions on behalf of the thing. So that's where it started, and then went on to cash, and we at the startup which I was working at, their job was to really simplify the movement of cash for retail organizations. So if you have, for example, a petrol station that takes lots of cash every day, it creates challenges from a recon perspective and a security perspective and all the rest of it. And we built a piece of equipment and a piece of software that allowed you to deposit the cash in there. We could tell you who deposited the cash, how much they deposited. We would then get somebody to come collect it. And so, and then going into Standard Bank, it was a similar thing. It was really about Forex is complicated and difficult for people. You've got to stand in queues, and you've got to go to branches, specific branches, and fill out forms, and it's long. And again, it was about, well, how do we simplify that? So yes, if I look at my career from that perspective, although the things that I did were very different, they were always in the financial services business, and they were always about using technology to solve problems.
And so that then brings us to Shyft, which is a particularly elegant digital solution to just a sucky problem to have when you want to move money from one currency to another. I know now it's a lot broader than what it was when it started, but maybe let's sort of start with the origin of Shyft, and talk about like how the product came into being. How sort of did you see a gap in the market, or sort of a problem that you wanted to solve, or was there a digital solution? How did it start for you?
So it really started for me. I had been at Standard Bank for about 4 years and was in a particular area of the organization where I personally was struggling, and I needed a change, and I ended up moving from corporate and investment banking to retail banking, and when I got there, I became sorry, I'm mumbling because I want to tell the story right, because it's a very weird thing that ended up setting us on this major path. And so when I got there, I met someone who was a very senior person in the organization. He said to me, what are you doing? What do you do here? And I said, oh, I'm doing something related to payments and cross-border payments. That was my role. And I really didn't know what my role was supposed to be. And he said to me, you know, oh, you come from corporate investment banking. Well, you should know how this works. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he was trying to understand foreign exchange in the retail space. And I luckily knew some people that could explain how it worked. And so what I did was I went and I figured out how foreign exchange worked in the retail space. And I went to him and I explained it to him. And he said, okay, great. Now I understand it. Well, we've got this problem, you see. The retail Forex business in the bank is not doing very well. And so I want you to fix it, okay? And then he kind of walked away, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I started looking into this business, and I started really trying to understand this business. And the more that I got to learn about the business, the more I understood that the business was having a problem. It had a big problem, and that was that our competitors were starting to digitize their offerings. So First National Bank and some of the other banks and Bidvest Bank were starting to offer foreign exchange related services in a digital way. And what we were seeing is that we were seeing declining revenues and declining volumes. And I realized, well, we've got to do something about this, and we have to fix this. And so the first thought that came into my head, which is probably the exact same thought of anybody working in a big organization, goes, well, you know, let's go and put this thing onto our digital channels. Let's go put it on our mobile app or our internet banking app. But what I also started learning is that, you know, I was just representing one of many businesses that needed to be transformed onto a digital platform. And so when I came along to you know, the Standard Bank teams and said, you know, we want to digitize, the guys were like, sure, no problem, get in line. We should be able to help, you know, your business out in 2 years or 2 to 3 years. I'm sure we'll get it done. You know, and for us, it's like that just simply wasn't an option. You know, we couldn't wait 2 to 3 years to get stuff done. We needed to do something now. And so we had to start thinking about other ways of digitizing foreign exchange and other ways of building these capabilities.
Other ways, do you mean outside of the bank, or what do you mean by other ways?
Well, at that stage, it wasn't clear. You know, it wasn't necessarily something outside of the bank, but we had to explore other opportunities and figure out how we could do this, because working within the bank had its limitations. And so that thought process started this chain of events where we started looking around and talking to people, and we actually came across a gentleman that was working at the bank at the time, and he had been set up to create an innovation area. And this gentleman was, some of you may know him, his name is Paul Steenkamp. And Paul, his job was to kind of do things a little differently, and he had a mandate to try and fix problems in a different way. And so that's when we started engaging with Paul. All of a sudden, all these other opportunities or ways to solve problems became clear. We could build our own platform. We could reimagine the Forex experience. We didn't just have to digitize the Forex experience, not just, you know, make a payment digital or allow you to order foreign notes or top up your card digitally, but actually reimagine it all, you know, completely. And that, you know, that's what led us to doing a couple of fundamental things, which I think have now become quite mainstream in product innovation, which is like this lean innovation process, which was, you know, this was back in early 2016, late 2015, we started interviewing customers and actually asking people, you know, like, what's your experience of foreign exchange, and what do you think about, you know, how do you send money overseas, and what do you want when you buy foreign exchange, and why do you buy foreign exchange, and when you go traveling, how do you usually pay for stuff when you're traveling overseas? And so we started, you know, he had already designed this framework, or at least leveraged frameworks that were being designed at the time to actually build a way of thinking and conceiving and conceptualizing capabilities that the banks just, you know, they weren't anywhere close to doing that. And that's really how we then came about this concept of let's do something that changes the way people experience foreign exchange. Let's decouple. So, and I'll just quickly hover on that. The thing about foreign exchange is that nobody really wakes up in the morning going, you know what, I'm going to buy foreign exchange. Very few people wake up in the morning doing that. People do, however, say, you know what, I need to move money overseas. I've got a child studying overseas, or I want to invest money overseas, or I want to travel overseas, or I want to buy something from overseas. And inherent in that activity is foreign exchange. And so the normal experience is like, okay, I want to move money overseas. Oh, okay, I need to buy dollars and I've got to do that. And that's part of that process. Oh, I'm traveling overseas. So, you know, as part of traveling overseas, I need foreign exchange. What we did was the fundamental difference between what we did and what everybody else does is that we decoupled the activity from the foreign exchange, because ultimately all of those activities, that I'm investing offshore, I'm moving money offshore, I'm traveling offshore, I'm buying goods offshore, all have one thing in common. In order to complete those transactions, you need foreign exchange. And so what we did was we first and foremost designed an app which made that very simple, really, really simple, far more simple than anything else available on the market at the time. And then we said, okay, that takes care of the primary need, foreign exchange. People are going to do something and they need foreign exchange to do that. Let them buy that foreign exchange when it suits them, when the rate is good, and let them hold that foreign exchange for as long as they want. And then let's start plugging in the capabilities that will facilitate what the individuals want to do with that foreign exchange. I want to move money offshore, so we plugged in a cross-border payment capability. I want to take that money and travel offshore. Here's a physical card that you can load your foreign exchange on and travel with it offshore. I want to shop for goods online from overseas. Here's a virtual card. You can use that. You can load your foreign exchange on that card and you can move and you can use it offshore. And so that became the foundation and the idea of what our app could be.
The order that you just explained is really interesting, because the second half of it is almost like classic product first principles, solve, you know, identify the core problem, solve that one first, and then extend around it. But you sort of described having these established ways of work and ways of thinking as a necessary environment in which to start the product. And I mean, I think that's been a lot of our sort of what makes Shyft interesting, is that it's something that's worked where in a framework, you know, big corporate needs to change, needs to adopt new digital ways of working, a framework that other people have struggled to really get right and achieve the same level of success. And so do you think having this first getting the ways of work right, the almost fertile ground, was like how pivotal was that to Shyft being able to evolve as it did and as fast as it did?
It was absolutely critical. It was, you know, big corporates are a strange thing, and I see Mark Labuskachny on the line. How's it, Mark? Because he will know exactly what I'm talking about. But you know, the thing with big corporates is that it's not one thing, and it's lots of different things. You know, people always talk about the bank. You know, the bank won't let you do this. Bank thinks like this, and all the rest of it. It's like, I'm still waiting to meet the bank. I've never met the bank. What I have met, though, are thousands of people inside the bank that have different ways of thinking about things. And so what kind of happened at that moment in time was that a couple of factors all came together that created an environment that allowed this different way of thinking, not just the different way of thinking to happen, but for us to think differently, but also be able to execute on that thinking. And that's really rare, because the vast majority of the organization wasn't really paying attention to what was going on over here. It was just simply had created this area, a challenge came, it found a place that allowed where that challenge could be solved in a very creative way, and off we went, and we were lucky enough to experience that. And that happens from time to time. Is that now mainstream within the organization? No, it certainly isn't. The organization has spent a lot of time slowly adapting, and certainly is significantly more advanced than where it was 5 or 6 years ago in the way that it conceives and solves problems. But do we see shifts happening every day being born? No, we don't. It's not that simple. It's much more complicated than that. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that the organization is moving in the right direction, and I think most of these large organizations are moving there, but they're moving at a very slow pace. There was call it like a wormhole, a wormhole in space, a wormhole, and we just happened to catch that wormhole, and through that we were able to leapfrog and deliver something different.
I want to just pull in a question from Buzi, which I think is relevant to the theme you're on at the moment. His question is, how did you go about putting together the internal team behind Shyft? And I know you initially had internal and external teams working on it. And what was hard for you about that process?
That's a good question. So what we did deliberately is we kept the internal team really small. I mean, there were 3 of us in the internal team that were working on Shyft, and directly. So part of the product team who had a vested interest in solving this problem, there were 3 people. Then there was a bit of a broader team that involved what we call the enablers. So these were all more senior people, and those would have been, the guys that would actually say, okay, cool, let's run a hot house and get 50 customers in, and we will, make sure that happens and pays for that. And okay, cool, if we're going to do this, we're going to need these people. And then there were the sponsors, and in the sponsors, there were 2 sponsors. There was the head of foreign exchange in Standard Bank, and the head of the area that I worked in. And those were the people that kind of made sure that they gave us what we call cover, in terms of making sure we had enough space to do what we needed to do, without it necessarily stopping, and making sure that there were, the right people were just giving us sufficient air cover that we could somehow get this right. And so out of those 3 people, I'm actually the only one that's left out of the original 3 people inside the bank. That's a part of it. The other 2 have moved into other things. But so it was a very small group of people, and we ran Shyft primarily as a skunkworks project. And a skunkworks project, for anyone that doesn't know, is really something that is not out in the open. It's kind of underground, and it's just left to do its own thing. And so what we actually managed to then do, and we leveraged, you know, Byte Orbit and PlayLogix built the front end, Rogers company, and so we used all these different vendors to help us build the main capability and the platform that we have today. And that's what really made us successful. You know, that's what really did it, because we were able to, without direct involvement from people who, you know, would tell us exactly how they thought we should do it. We could just do it the way we thought we should do it, and that was the big success factor.
And then also, I guess that gave you complete control over the resources. You didn't need to stand in any queues internally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what still gives us, you know, the ability to continue to be innovative and to continue to build and deliver capabilities like the investment capability, Mark, which is about to go live. So just hang in there, like a week or 2 weeks. And exactly that. We weren't fighting. We were no longer fighting for over the same resources. We managed to get our own resources that we could direct and determine exactly what we wanted to prioritize and how we wanted to prioritize it. And that's really a massive success factor.
And is that still the model you have now, or has the model changed over time?
You know, by and large, it's the same. Obviously, Shyft has got a lot more attention from inside the organization, and I think that while we guard our resources and our ability to develop and build and direct resources, we guard that with our lives. There have been attempts to pull that back into the organization, but you know, it's really our core strength. The reality is also that we are very much Standard Bank. You know, I am a Standard Bank employee, and the people that work directly for me are all Standard Bank employees. And we also have to acknowledge that without the bank, Shyft also wouldn't exist today. And the bank also gives us a lot of not only credibility within the broader you know, the broader environment, but it also provides us with a lot of things that when you look at things just from an innovation, a digital and innovation perspective, you take for granted. But things like the ability to do adequate compliance and money laundering, you know, we hate these terms, but they are so necessary. You know, sanction screening, regulatory reporting to the South African Reserve Bank. Every time somebody takes money out of the country, you know, making sure that we have got a secure and safe product. You know, the backbone of the bank and the infrastructure of the bank has been critical in making sure that we are able to provide that. So I think it's a balance. You know, it's a delicate balance. It's what do you keep out, and what do you leverage from within the bank. And I think at the moment, you know, we walk that tightrope every day, and I think we've got that balance quite it's quite good at the moment. So yeah.
Let's zoom out for a minute and look at the sort of the rest of the Shyft journey. You've now got almost 4 years under the belt.
Yeah, no, just over 4 years.
Are there in sort of, and you've made a bunch of product decisions along the way, adding more capabilities. Are there any points that you look back on and you go, "Ooh, that was a mistake"? Or have you had a rosy journey?
Yeah, it's been great. Plain sailing, just no issue. Yeah, no, they have. It's a challenging environment. It's a challenging experience, but a rewarding experience nonetheless. And I think that there are definitely moments. If I could go back and redo those moments or make different decisions, I certainly would. I think I think that you know, the danger when you are building a capability like this is, and especially one that gets a lot of attention in a big organization, is that you have a lot of different people with a lot of different agendas and a lot of different needs that they want fulfilled. And so it's easy to be influenced to do things in the interest of politics or an individual rather than in the interest of the customer or the product. And I think there have been times where I've been influenced by the broader, organization to do things that actually ultimately add no value. But it's ticking off something for somebody somewhere, and so I think that if I think back, there are times where I really should have, and we as a team, and it's not just me, but really need to have, where we didn't always put necessarily the interest of the customer or the interest of the product front and center. And that's meant that we've spent time, money, and effort doing things that haven't delivered real value. And so I think that's something I've become a lot more conscious of. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And making sure that we are very clear in our reasons and how that's going to help us ultimately achieve our objectives. Yeah.
I think that's something that everyone that's sort of worked in this space in big corporates struggles with, that the concessions that you have to make to almost buy yourself more organizational capital, more cover, more sort of space. Do you think going forward you'd lean harder into sort of, now that you've seen how little value some of it adds, to the customer, there's still value that it adds to your relationship with the organization. So do you think going forward, what does that mean? Are you just more tactical about the concessions that you make, or are you taking a where you sort of hard no customer only? I mean, can you even do that?
Yes, you can. And for me, what it's kind of boiled down to is that we have developed a vision of what we believe this product can be, and what it if it's successful, it can be something really significant on the continent today, and we are consistently developing and redeveloping and re-evaluating the roadmap that we need to take, that we believe will get us there. Okay. Our success is not just success for us as individuals, but it's success for our broader stakeholders, which is particularly Standard Bank. And so our reaching our vision and our goals is critical for us as much as it's critical for the bank and the broader organization. And so we have to remind the stakeholders that we work with and the people that are the leaders within the organization, that it may seem like a good idea to do X, but if X doesn't deliver the vision, then we might solve a problem for whoever needs us to do X, but we're actually not getting closer to delivering on the vision. And that's important for everybody, for our organization, for the shareholders, for our customers, our future customers and for us. And so we've become a lot more pure about saying, you know, we're doing this not because we think it's right. We're doing this just because we think it's right. We're doing this because we believe that this is what needs to be done to achieve success for everybody. So you know, like the investment capability that we're launching, we believe is going to be a significant game changer for Shyft. And we had a lot of pressure from other people in the organization to go into a totally different route. And others felt that we were going to start competing with them on an investment side. But ultimately, we said, well, forget about your own personal opinion. Does this help the organization achieve a particular strategy or strategic goal? And the answer was absolutely it does. And so the threats and the you know, people that were threatened and people that weren't happy with it, their voices got diminished because it ultimately became about the larger vision and strategy.
Okay, so before we start taking more questions from the other participants, maybe just tell us a little bit about Shyft's next big move. You just touched on it now with the investment, but where does it come from, and what is your vision here, like the next big expansion for Shyft?
Okay, so for us, I think there's a couple of factors that are coming into play here. I think what we are seeing today globally is this move towards platform businesses and neobanks and you know, the digitization of financial services is really becoming mainstream right now. And what we mean by that is that you know, ordinary people today in North America and Europe and the UK and certainly even in China are really, through a mobile device, able to do things that you know, they could only have dreamt of doing 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And like buying foreign exchange, like sending money all over the world, like getting a loan online in less than 30 seconds. Like all of these things are becoming mainstream. The days of people walking into branches and sitting down and having a relationship with some guy in a branch are over. And what we believe is that Africa is absolutely, you know, it is ripe for platform players to come in and to start providing ordinary people across the entire continent access to these types of services, complex financial services, in a very simple, user-friendly way. So our specific view is that we want ordinary people to be able to connect to the global financial systems, and in so doing, turn ordinary people across Africa into global citizens. Why should the ability for an ordinary person to invest in Netflix or Facebook, or buy Bitcoin, or send money into a bank account anywhere in the world, or buy goods and services online using foreign exchange, be just simply the domain for wealthy people, or for people that live in the US or in Europe? We have a technology and a capability that we believe can provide anybody with access to those services. And in Africa in particular, it's something that is desperately needed. And I think that certainly with the proliferation of mobile technology and smartphones and 3G and 4G and 5G, what we're going to see is a continent where in the same way that, you know, fixed line communication has never really been a major thing within sub-Saharan Africa, people went straight onto mobile communication. We're going to see ordinary people moving from a cash-based society to a digitized wallet-based society and straight onto very sophisticated financial services capabilities. And so what we're doing is on Shyft is that we're leveraging the power of foreign exchange and the FX as the heart of what we do to make it very simple for people to move from local currencies into FX and leverage that power of FX to give people access to markets across the world, bank accounts across the world, mobile wallets, and card rails and all sorts of other things. And that's our vision. And actually, as it is today, we are starting to deliver on that vision by enabling the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, which is actually currently in live testing and will be available to everybody in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that's very exciting. So we're all waiting then for Amazon share price to drop again so that we can get in and then it can go.
That's for sure.
Okay. We've got a couple of questions here. Roger's just trolling you. He wants to know, when are you launching Bitcoin?
So we have got the capability in the back end. We've already we've got a really great partner that can deliver that to us. Right now, we want to make sure we get the normal shares and ETFs right. So I reckon, within the next couple of months, we could have Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum as an option, an investment option on Shyft, and we're currently exploring that, and we think we can deliver that quite soon.
And then we've got a question here from Menzi, who asks, what are some of the challenges you've encountered as a fintech startup from SA specifically?
Well, sure. Well, I think that SA, that's a good question, because in our line of work, the biggest challenge with SA is are the exchange control restrictions. Exchange control, we are so used to exchange control in South Africa, we think it's normal. It's not normal. Most of the world operates with no exchange control restrictions, and so certainly in first world countries, exchange control is not a major thing in people's lives. But in South Africa, every single cent has to be reported. There are limitations, and the way you do things is of utmost importance. And so that's really been a major challenge for us, but it's also in a way been a major opportunity for us, because we've been able to solve that problem in a simple way. So certainly in South Africa, I think that's been probably the biggest challenge. But I think there are other challenges. South Africa is a very diverse country. It has a very diverse set of individuals, from extremely poor people to extremely wealthy people to people that speak many different languages, see the world in very different ways. And so I think it does create more challenges, because ultimately we want to solve as many people's problems as possible. But in a place like South Africa, you kind of have to at least start off in a particular direction and solve a particular type of problem for as wide a group as possible, and then move from there. So whereas the UK and the Europe, it's less so as it is in South Africa. People have very similar means and outlooks and that kind of stuff, although that is certainly changing quite significantly. But yeah, I think South Africa is an awesome place to come and try and learn how to do these things, because it's very varied and different, and then it's got its own set of challenges. But if you can overcome them, you do well.
Here's a question from Mark Laviskachny. How much of the existing infrastructure or rails were you able to reuse? And did development work that way, or did you work with partners to build from scratch?
Mark, we used really fundamentally the only thing that we really leveraged from a capability perspective in the organization was the FX API. So that was probably the most progressive API in the bank, which was obviously run by Global Markets. But the other capabilities, like the card capability, the payment rails capability, the actual heart of the beast, we built that from scratch, and we outsourced card and cross-border payments, and now the investment stuff we don't use any of Standard Bank's infrastructure. What we started doing more and more is using the operational risk and compliance structures. So we do leverage the Standard Bank's ability to do transaction monitoring and anti-money laundering monitoring and all of that kind of stuff, and obviously the regulatory reporting. For that, we use this Standard Bank's infrastructure, but in the actual technological capabilities that we provide solutions, only the FX. The rest of it we plug into partners, global partners that just handle all of that stuff for us, and it makes our lives so much easier. So we don't have to worry about systems going down and having to invest in capital infrastructure, that sort of stuff. We don't have those problems.
Here's a question from Amit. What do you think comes next after platforms and super apps?
What comes next? I mean, I don't know. I think we are so. I think it depends on the perspective. If you mean like from a customer experience perspective, like where do we go? I think that what's next is just is embedded experiences. So now you have a destination that you've got to go to in order to do something. And I think that the future will be that comes to you. It is embedded in your daily activity somehow, and it's hard to conceptualize. But instead of me having Shyft and going on to Shyft to do my forex, somehow that experience becomes embedded in my everyday life. And I think you're starting to see the genesis of that in things like Siri and leveraging things like WhatsApp. Can I make a payment on WhatsApp? Can I use WhatsApp as? I don't know if I don't think those are going to be the solutions. I don't think that people are just all of a sudden going to start making financial decisions through WhatsApp or whatever it is. Yeah. But if you think about the philosophy of embedding the thing you want to do within the activity that you're doing, like get in my car and I hear on the radio a good news story about a share that I want to invest, a share that or a company that's doing well, and I can just think to myself, I want to take $10,000, or I want $10,000 invested in that company, and then it happens like that. How exactly that's going to work, I don't know, but that's how I see the future potentially.
Everything becoming more frictionless.
Yeah.
So here's a question from Yuku, and then one from Roger as well. So first, Yuku's question: as a leader managing expectations upwards into the bank and internally within your team, how has your leadership style changed during COVID? That's a great question.
I'm gonna make it easy for me here. I think that COVID has really forced us to be, I think, a bit like, so there are a lot of people on the line that work with me here. I don't know if they're still on the line. I see Tariq and Anya and Wendy are on the line. How's it, guys? So I can't run away from this, but certainly I think that you can only go as fast as the people around you. You know, you can't run off at 1,000,000 miles, and because you need people around you to get things done. And something that I've really started learning and understanding, which you know, my wife thinks I've got the EQ of a tortoise, but what I've learned is that, like, you got to move in sync with other people, and somebody moving faster than everybody else seems okay, but you realize that eventually you got to fall back and get everybody else and move them forward. And in COVID, you know, where you don't have that face-to-face interaction, you don't have that the ability to really rally the troops in the way that you could. You know, you've got to be so much more in touch with the people around you. Certainly the people that report into you and the people that you lean on to get delivery.
So what does that mean practically? Just more time talking, more time catching up,
more shouting and screaming. No, I'm just kidding. Scream. No, what it practically means is that you've got to tune into people. You've got to tune into where individuals, especially the key individuals, you've got to tune into where they are, and that's hard for someone like me. That's really hard, but I have to tune in, and what you've got to do is you've got to maneuver the environment around the individuals where there are problems, because people are going through their own stuff. You know, people go through their own stuff all the time. People will have hardships in their life. They have challenges in their life, and you can choose to say, well, it's not my problem. I just expect, this is what I expect, A, B, and C. But it doesn't actually solve the problem. You've got to the extent that you can, understand that somebody's going through it. You don't have to get involved in it, but you've got to understand that there's something going on, and you've got to try and maneuver the others around you in order to support and get that individual to figure it out and help them through it, so that you can get to the attainment of the goal that you're trying to do. And that's been a huge thing that I've had to come to terms with in COVID, during COVID. And I think that managing upwards is it's actually not that dissimilar. You know, it's I've got leaders who are also going through their own challenges. You know, the organization through COVID, I mean, all the banks got absolutely hammered in COVID. You know, the share prices got knocked down. You know, there was massive focus on bad debt because people weren't able to earn and all the rest of it. And so the whole tuning of the organization started tuning into this impending crisis. You know, and so you can't just come along and go, oh, well, you know, I couldn't really care about that. You know, I need this and that and the other, and nobody's supporting me, and boo-hoo-hoo. You know, you've got to understand the environment in which you operate, and you've got to maneuver it in such a way that you can still somehow get what you need to continue without you becoming this needy, you know, individual who thinks it's all about themselves, or it's all about shit. It's not. There's a much bigger picture here. There's an organization that employs 50,000 people around the world, and generates hundreds of billions of things. So yes, what you're doing is important, but you've got to understand where you sit in the context of it, and what levers you can pull and not pull in order to achieve an outcome. I'm very wishy-washy, but it's really true.
Yeah, and I think it taps in. I mean, everybody's been struggling with that. Yogesh has got a nice sort of summary. He's like, empathy is key, which I think has been a lesson for everyone that works on teams, particularly in this last year. We're going to do a last question, one from Roger, and then wrap up because we're at time. So Roger says, in your opinion, can corporates innovate internally, or do they need to outsource it before merging it back in? And then what are the key factors that need to be present for that to work?
You know, Roger, the problem with that is that there's no one answer to that question. It's not like you can say, yeah, no, you just need to build it out and then merge it back in. You know, there's a much more fundamental thing around it. I think that the challenge with corporates is that corporates are just human beings. They're just lots and lots of human beings. The bigger the corporate, the more human beings there are inside the corporate. Okay, and so people, there is a culture which I think has become quite pervasive within organizations, that and it's normal that I think pervasive might be the wrong word. Maybe there's a culture that is an overriding culture in corporates where people tend to a large group of people tend to shy away from ownership of things, and maybe even that's not quite fair. Maybe that there's a culture where people are not given enough space and autonomy to own things. Okay, that might be a better way of explaining it. And I think that when you have that culture, if you feel that way, you work. Your job is just it's a job. It's a job. I come into work and my job is to analyze something, and then my output is an analysis. Okay. And so what happens is that it doesn't matter. It makes no difference whether you build something inside the bank or outside of the bank and keep it outside or integrate it in. It's not about that model. There's no right or wrong. It's about the people that are doing that job and how they are invested in what they're doing. Because you can have amazing teams inside the organization that can deliver amazing capabilities. You can take that same thing and take it outside of the organization and work with a business that just doesn't get it, and it just all flops over and it doesn't really drive the outcome. It's not about whether one is right or the other one is right. What we are seeing is that moving it outside has got lots of benefits, but sometimes keeping it inside has got benefits. The real value and the real difference is about the people who are tasked with doing this and how they feel about what they're doing. Are they invested in what they're doing? Do they believe in the outcome of what they're doing and therefore will drive, towards that outcome because they personally are invested in it? Or is it just a job? And the job is I work from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock I go home and I couldn't care less what happens thereafter. And the next day I'll come back. That's the difference between success and failure. How the people that are tasked to deliver an outcome feel about what they do.
That's a great way of putting it. It's true. It's right to the heart.
Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or all of these people, they believe in what they do, but they're also surrounded by people that also believe in what they do. Because if they weren't, it doesn't matter how much you believe in it, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter how much I believe in Shyft. If Wendy and Tariq and Anya and everybody else didn't believe in it, nothing would ever happen.
That's a great thought to end it on. And so thank you, Arno. It's been a very, I think, unique and rare insight into a type of product building and leadership that we don't hear about often. So thank you really for taking the time to share that with everyone that was here this evening. And thanks also to everyone that joined this evening. I did get some messages about people struggling with load shedding. We will post the video also on Meetup and on LinkedIn. So, so yeah, thanks very much. Thanks again to you, Arno.
Thanks, guys.
Where Shyft goes.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and I hope it was useful and helpful. And yeah, thanks to all of you out there, and I wish you guys all the best of success in all the endeavors that you do.
Great. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.